As the great Buddha once wisely said, "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." These words carry a quiet truth, especially in the moments when life begins to unravel. When the people you once leaned on walk away, when your plans collapse and your heart feels like it's drowning in silence, you begin to wonder if you'll ever feel whole again. But Buddhism doesn't offer escape. It offers awakening. It teaches us that even in our darkest hour, we can return to a stillness the world cannot touch, a calm that isn't given, it's remembered. Today, let us reflect on powerful lessons from the Buddhist path, wisdom to help you stay grounded when life tries to break you, and hold on with grace when everything feels like it's falling apart. 1. Accept the storm without becoming the storm. One of the most powerful lessons you can ever learn, especially when life begins to hurt, disappoint, or collapse around you, is this: not every storm in your life is meant to be fought. Some are meant to be felt, understood, and allowed to pass through you. When we're faced with pain, betrayal, loss, or sudden change, our first instinct is to resist it. We clench our fists, we argue with reality, we try to hold the pieces together, as if struggling against what's happening will somehow make it all go away. But in Buddhist teaching, suffering isn't just caused by pain itself. It is made heavier by our refusal to allow that pain to exist. It is made worse by our belief that life should always be smooth, comfortable, and according to our plans. So when life doesn't go our way, when things break or people leave, we take it personally. We feel as if life is attacking us, and every wave of difficulty feels like a betrayal. But here is where everything begins to shift. When you begin to understand that storms are a natural part of the journey, just like sunny days, calm seas, and joyful moments, your relationship with pain transforms. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to ask, "How can I move through this with wisdom?" You stop resisting what is, and instead begin to witness it from a deeper place. Imagine yourself not as the person drowning in the storm, but as the sky above it. The thunder may crash, the rain may fall heavily, the winds may howl with force, but no matter how violent the storm becomes, the sky remains untouched, always there, always open. You are that sky. You are not the pain, you are the awareness that sees the pain. You are not the chaos, you are the consciousness that holds the chaos without letting it destroy you. The more you resist pain, the more power it has over you. But the moment you accept it, acknowledge it, and allow it to exist without judgment, it begins to soften. You may feel sadness, but you don't have to become sadness. You may feel overwhelmed, but you don't have to identify as someone who is broken. Calmness doesn't come from pushing emotions away or pretending everything is fine. Calmness comes from turning inward, sitting with the storm, and realizing that this moment, no matter how difficult, is also part of your path. It is part of your growth. And it will pass. Think of a tree in the wind. The branches sway, the leaves scatter, but the roots stay strong, deep in the earth. Be like that tree. Let the winds of life move around you. Let the emotions rise and fall. But don't let them uproot your peace. Don't let the temporary chaos convince you that you are weak or lost. Because the truth is, you are still here. You are still breathing. And if you can sit through the storm without becoming it, you will discover a strength that nothing in this world can take away. You don't need to fight life. You don't need to fix every problem instantly. You just need to stay rooted in presence, to trust the process of change, and to remember that the sky does not fear the storm. It simply lets it pass. 2. Let go of the illusion of control. One of the hardest things to do when life begins to fall apart is to let go. Letting go sounds simple, even peaceful, but when you're in pain, when the people you depended on start to drift away, when plans unravel, When the future becomes uncertain, your instinct will be to hold on tighter. You'll try to fix things. You'll try to make everything go back to how it was. You'll grip so tightly onto the idea of how life should be that you forget to accept how life is. And the tighter you grip, the more exhausted you become. The more you try to control what is uncontrollable, the more suffering you create. But here's something Buddhism gently but clearly teaches. Control is an illusion. You cannot control how others behave. You cannot control the timing of life. You cannot force people to stay or circumstances to remain comfortable. Things change, people change, emotions rise and fall like tides. And just like a river doesn't stop flowing because you try to hold it in your hands, life doesn't freeze in place just because you're afraid of what comes next. The more you cling to the illusion of control, the more you cut yourself off from peace. And ironically, the moment you release that need to control, even just a little, you begin to feel a freedom you hadn't known in years. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you give up on your dreams or become passive in your own life. Letting go means you stop trying to force outcomes that are beyond your reach. It means you understand that your peace is more valuable than your plans. It means you recognize that no matter how much effort you put into something, you are not the ultimate author of the universe. There is a rhythm to life, a natural unfolding, and your task is not to manipulate it, but to move in harmony with it. Imagine holding a rope that is burning your hands. The more tightly you hold it, the more pain you feel. Letting go is not failure, it's healing. It is the decision to stop hurting yourself with your own expectations. It is the wisdom to say, this is not mine to carry anymore. And sometimes letting go is not something you do once. Sometimes you have to let go again and again, every morning, every breath, until your heart begins to loosen, until the tightness in your chest fades, and until you finally feel safe not having all the answers. In Buddhist practice, this is why meditation and mindfulness are so essential. They are not rituals of escape. They are tools of awareness. They remind you, moment by moment, that you can release your grip, that you can trust the present moment, even when it feels uncertain. That peace doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. Not a passive kind of surrender, but a deep and intelligent one. The kind that says, I will do my part, and I will release what is beyond me. So when life tries to tear you apart, pause for a moment and ask yourself, what am I clinging to right now? And what might happen if I let it go? Often you'll find that the weight you're carrying is not the situation itself, but your attachment to how you expected it to be, and once you release that, even a little, you create space for peace to return. In this space of surrender, you begin to breathe again, you begin to see clearly, and you begin to feel the soft return of inner stillness, not because everything is fixed, but because you have stopped trying to control what was never yours to hold. 3. Calm is not a feeling, it is a discipline. One of the greatest misunderstandings about calmness is the belief that it's something you stumble upon by accident, that it's a magical moment that just shows up when life is quiet, when nothing is wrong, when you feel light and peaceful without trying. But in reality, calm is not something that simply happens to you. It is not a gift that life gives you when it finally decides to be kind. Calmness is a discipline. It is a practice. It is a choice you make, often in the middle of pain, discomfort, and inner chaos. When people see monks sitting in stillness, wrapped in their robes, surrounded by silence, they often assume those monks feel peaceful all the time. But the truth is, many monks began their journey with restless minds, painful memories, and emotional storms, just like everyone else. The difference is that they trained themselves to sit with those emotions without running from them. They learn to return again and again to the breath, to the present moment, and to that quiet inner space where peace can be built, not found. If you wait to feel calm before choosing to act calmly, you will never find peace, because life rarely offers you the perfect conditions for serenity. The world will always be noisy. Your thoughts will sometimes race. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. Calmness must be cultivated in the middle of all that, not in its absence. It begins with very simple practices. Waking up in the morning and sitting for 5 minutes in silence. Breathing in slowly and fully, and breathing out with intention. Watching your thoughts instead of following them. Feeling the tension in your shoulders and releasing it with care. Choosing to respond to conflict with a pause instead of an instant reaction. These moments may feel small and insignificant, but they are the bricks that build the temple of your inner peace. Day by day, they strengthen your mind. Not to make it perfect, but to make it still. Calm is not passive, it is not weak, it is not empty. True calm is powerful, it is presence without panic. It is clarity without noise. It is standing in the middle of a storm and knowing that even though the winds are howling and everything around you is shaking, there is a part of you that remains steady and unmoved. That part of you is not built by luck. It is built by daily conscious practice. And it doesn't require a monastery or a mountain. You don't need silence all around you to cultivate silence within you. Even in the middle of a busy home, a noisy city, or a stressful situation, you can return to your breath. You can feel the soles of your feet touching the ground. You can bring awareness to your body, to your posture, to the way you are holding tension, and then gently soften. This is the practice. This is the path. And like anything meaningful, it requires repetition, patience and kindness toward yourself when you fall short. You may not always feel peaceful, but you can practice peace. You can choose peace. You can return to peace, not because the world is calm, but because you are learning to be. You may still feel the sting of words, the ache of disappointment, the sting of fear, but you'll know how to return home to yourself again and again. This is the discipline of calm, not waiting for a perfect life to feel peaceful, but building peace within your imperfect, beautiful, ever-changing life. And the more you practice, the more it becomes your nature. Until one day you notice that what used to overwhelm you now barely shakes you. What once made you react instantly now simply passes through you like a soft wind, because you've trained yourself not to control the world, but to master your response to it. Fourth, observe the mind without judgment. When life feels heavy and your emotions start to overflow, the natural tendency is to turn inward and begin criticizing yourself. Thoughts race through your mind. Why am I like this? Why can't I handle this better? Why do I always fall apart? In moments of distress, we often forget that it's not the emotions themselves that hurt the most. It's the judgment we attach to those emotions. The mind becomes not only a messenger of pain, but a harsh critic, amplifying our suffering with stories of failure, shame, and weakness. But Buddhism teaches us something profoundly healing. You are not your thoughts, and you don't have to believe everything your mind says. Your mind is like a sky, vast, open, ever-present. Thoughts are like clouds. They drift in, they change shape. They sometimes storm, sometimes pass by gently. But no matter how dark or intense the clouds become, the sky is never harmed by them. It remains untouched, pure and vast. In the same way, your true self is not defined by what you think or feel in passing moments of struggle. Your consciousness, your ability to observe what is happening without getting lost in it, is your greatest freedom. To observe the mind without judgment is to begin the practice of mindfulness, noticing your inner dialogue as it arises, paying attention to your feelings as they move through your body. watching your thoughts appear, grow loud, then fade, without trying to push them away or grasp them tightly. It is the art of being present with whatever is happening inside you, without adding layers of guilt, shame, or resistance. Imagine a monk sitting quietly near a river, watching leaves float downstream. Some leaves are light, drifting peacefully. Others are soggy, tangled, spinning in circles. But the monk does not try to jump into the river and collect each one. He does not judge one leaf as better than another. He watches them pass with a soft, steady gaze. This is how you must learn to observe your thoughts and feelings, with openness, with compassion, without trying to fix or fight them. When pain arises, instead of saying, "I shouldn't be feeling this," try saying, "Ah, sadness is here." When anger rises, say gently, "I see you, anger." When fear creeps in, place a hand on your heart and acknowledge, "Fear is present." Just this simple act of naming and observing begins to dissolve the intensity of emotion, because what the mind resists grows stronger, but what the mind allows can finally begin to heal. Judgment is the mind's way of trying to protect you, but in doing so, it can become a prison. When you shame yourself for struggling, you only bury the pain deeper. When you tell yourself you're weak for feeling anxious or overwhelmed, you double the suffering. But when you bring gentle awareness to your inner experience, when you hold space for yourself like a wise teacher comforting a hurting student, you open the door to transformation. In Buddhism, we are taught that mindfulness is not just about being aware, it is about being aware with kindness, not cold detachment, not mechanical observation, but loving, gentle, present attention. The kind of attention you would give to someone you truly care about. You must learn to offer that same kindness to your own inner world. This is not easy at first. The habit of judgment runs deep. But with practice, you begin to notice the space between the thought and your response. You begin to see that you can choose how to meet what arises within you. And in that space, healing begins. You start to realize that your thoughts are not enemies to be fought or truths to be obeyed. They are just mental weather. You can let them pass. You can watch without getting swept away. You can feel deeply without losing yourself. And this is where calmness begins to grow. Not from suppressing emotions, not from pretending to be okay, but from witnessing yourself with presence and patience. You become a still lake reflecting the sky, sometimes dark, sometimes bright, but always whole, always still beneath the surface. You begin to trust your own ability to hold space for your pain without panicking, to breathe through discomfort without running, and to meet yourself not with criticism, but with care. So the next time life shakes you and your mind begins to spiral, remember this sacred practice. Pause, observe, don't judge, just notice. Hold space for whatever is arising, and know that within that spacious awareness, you are already healing, you are already becoming free. Fourth, observe the mind without judgment. There is a subtle but powerful shift that happens the moment you stop trying to fix every thought and instead simply observe it. We live most of our lives trapped in our heads, caught up in a constant swirl of thoughts, assumptions, fears, and judgments. The mind speaks to us all day long. It narrates our lives. It creates imaginary outcomes. It compares, criticizes, replays the past, and projects into the future. And more often than not, we believe everything it says without question. We let it shape our emotions. We let it direct our actions. We let it convince us that we are whatever story it repeats the loudest. But Buddhism invites us to take a step back, not away from life, but deeper into it, not to escape the mind, but to relate to it in a new way, as the observer, not the victim. When life becomes heavy and emotional storms arise, fear, sadness, anger, loneliness, the mind starts running wild, trying to explain, label, or escape what's happening. It says things like, "This shouldn't be happening. You're not good enough. Everything is falling apart. You'll never be happy again." These thoughts feel so real, so convincing, that you may begin to identify with them completely. You don't just feel sad, you become sadness. You don't just feel anxious, you start to believe that something is wrong with you for even feeling it. The mind doesn't just offer observations, it attaches meaning, blame, and judgment. And this is how suffering multiplies. Pain is one layer, judgment is another, shame is another, and soon you are buried beneath the weight of your own thoughts, unable to breathe. But the practice of mindfulness, central to Buddhism, teaches us a radical and healing truth. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness that sees them, and that awareness cannot be broken. It cannot be stained. It is like the sky, vast and pure, untouched by the weather that moves through it. This is the essence of freedom, not from pain, but from identification with pain. To observe the mind without judgment is to become like a calm and patient witness, sitting quietly by the river of your thoughts. The river flows. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes muddy. Sometimes it rushes with intensity, sometimes it moves gently. But you don't have to jump in. You don't have to swim after every thought that drifts by. You don't have to fix every emotion that arises. You simply sit, watch, and allow. You let the thoughts come and you let them go. You remain still while everything else moves. This is not detachment in the cold sense. This is intimacy with your inner world in its rawest form, without judgment, without suppression, without resistance. It's important to remember that observing without judgment doesn't mean you're ignoring your pain. It means you're choosing to meet it with compassion instead of criticism. When sadness arises, instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," you say, "Sadness is here right now." When anger comes up, you don't say, "This makes me a bad person." You say, "I notice anger arising." You don't push it down. You don't act on it mindlessly. You simply allow it to be seen, to be witnessed with love. There is deep healing in being seen, and that includes being seen by your own awareness. So many of us grew up not being taught how to feel without judgment. We learned to hide our pain, to criticize our emotions, to believe that feeling deeply was a weakness. But mindfulness teaches us to reverse that conditioning. It teaches us that the strongest thing you can do is to sit with what's difficult and meet it with gentle awareness. In your daily life, this practice becomes a sacred habit. You might notice the tightness in your chest before a difficult conversation and pause to feel it. You might feel overwhelmed by negative thoughts and take a breath instead of reacting to them. You might find yourself falling into old patterns, self-doubt, comparison, anger, and instead of feeding them, you simply notice them. You become a mirror, calmly reflecting what is happening inside without trying to change the image. And in doing so, the image begins to change on its own. Judgment contracts the mind. It tightens your heart. It turns discomfort into identity. But observation expands you. It opens the space around your emotions. It gives your pain room to breathe. And often, just that space is enough to bring relief. Because what you resist persists, but what you allow begins to release its grip on you. The Buddha once said, "As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not shaken by praise or blame." This inner stability doesn't come from controlling the mind. It comes from understanding it, watching it, respecting its nature without becoming enslaved by it. When you observe your thoughts without judgment, you begin to recognize familiar patterns. You see how your mind reacts to fear, how it tries to protect you by imagining the worst. how it recycles old stories to keep you in the comfort of the known, and when you see these patterns clearly, with love instead of blame, they begin to loosen. You are no longer unconscious, you are no longer at their mercy, you are awake. This awareness becomes your refuge. When others hurt you, you notice your response, but you don't let it define you. When the world is noisy and chaotic, you return to the stillness within you. When the mind spins stories of fear, you listen without feeding them. You hold everything with spaciousness, and that space becomes your freedom. So let this practice become your way of life. Every day, take a few moments to watch your mind, not to judge it, not to silence it, but to simply witness its movement, like watching clouds cross the sky. Bring the same kindness you would offer to a hurting child. And over time, the storm inside will begin to calm, not because it disappears, but because you've learned to sit with it without fear. And in that space of calm observation, you'll discover something you may have forgotten, that beneath all your thoughts, all your emotions, all your experiences, there is a part of you that has always been whole, always been present, and always at peace. 5. Use pain as a teacher, not a punishment. It is a natural human response to view pain as something wrong, something to escape, something to fight against. When we are hurting, physically, emotionally, spiritually, the first thought we usually have is, "This shouldn't be happening." We assume something has gone off track. We see pain as a punishment, as a curse, or as proof that something in us or around us is broken. But Buddhism gently challenges this belief and invites us to look again. It does not deny the reality of suffering. It does not ask you to pretend the pain isn't real. Instead, it offers a radical reframe. Pain is not here to destroy you. It is here to teach you. The human experience is filled with birth, death, change, disappointment, joy, love, loss, confusion, and transformation. Pain is not separate from life. It is woven into the fabric of our existence. It shows up in different forms: a betrayal from someone you trusted, the death of a loved one, a failed dream, an inner emptiness you can't explain. It pierces the heart in a way that words can't describe. And yet, in the deepest teachings of the Buddha, we learn that these moments of suffering are not punishments sent to shame or condemn us. They are messengers. They arrive to show us something about ourselves, about the world, about the nature of attachment, impermanence, and awakening. Instead of resisting the pain or rushing to numb it, Buddhism invites us to sit with it, not as victims, but as students. Pain can break your illusions. It can dissolve your ego. It can expose your attachments, your expectations, your false identities. It can bring you face to face with the truth, that nothing is permanent, that control is an illusion, and that clinging leads to suffering. But beneath all of that, pain can also point to something even more sacred. It can awaken compassion, humility, wisdom, and a deeper connection to yourself and to all beings. Think of the lotus flower, one of the most important symbols in Buddhism. It grows in the muddiest of waters. It does not bloom in clean, clear ponds. It rises through the muck, the darkness, the weight of the murky world around it. And when it reaches the surface, it opens, not in bitterness, not in resistance, but in beauty. Your pain is that mud, and your growth, your quiet, sacred blooming, comes from your willingness to rise through it. Of course, this doesn't mean pain is easy. This doesn't mean you need to be grateful for every wound the moment it's made. Healing takes time, and feeling is part of that process. You are allowed to grieve, to cry, to fall apart, to question everything. But even in those moments of despair, a small shift in perspective can change everything. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this moment trying to teach me?" The question itself will not erase the pain, but it will soften your relationship to it. It will transform pain from something to run away from into something to walk through slowly, mindfully, courageously. Maybe the heartbreak you're experiencing is teaching you about letting go of dependence. Maybe the failure you feel is teaching you about humility and perseverance. Maybe the loneliness you carry is revealing the places where you've abandoned yourself. Every painful moment carries with it a deeper lesson, but only if we pause long enough to listen. Pain speaks in silence. It teaches in stillness. And when we meet it with presence instead of resistance, it begins to reveal its purpose. In Buddhist practice, even meditation itself can be painful at times. Sitting in silence can bring up old memories, suppressed emotions, restless energy. But the point of practice is not to avoid discomfort. It is to befriend it, to stay, to breathe, to learn to hold pain without letting it define you. And from this place of mindful awareness, you begin to notice something miraculous. Pain can open your heart. It can connect you to others who suffer. It can make you softer, more present, more awake to the suffering of the world. It can deepen your compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. This is not a lesson that comes easily. It takes time to trust that pain has something to offer. It takes courage to sit in the fire of your emotions without running. But over and over again, you'll find that what you thought would destroy you becomes the very thing that grows you. Not in spite of your pain, but because of it. Pain strips away what is false. It humbles the ego. It makes you more honest. It reveals what really matters. And perhaps most beautifully, it teaches you that you are capable of surviving more than you ever imagined. That even when the worst has happened, you are still here. You are still breathing. You are still capable of beginning again. And as this realization settles in, you stop seeing pain as a punishment. You stop asking, "Why me?" And you start whispering, "Thank you. I see now. Thank you for showing me where I was clinging. Thank you for breaking what needed to break. Thank you for making me softer, wiser, and more whole, not in spite of my scars, but because of them." So the next time pain comes to your door, don't slam it shut. Don't pretend you're fine. Don't numb it or judge yourself for feeling it. Sit with it. Breathe with it. Listen. Ask it what it has come to teach you. And trust that buried within that very pain is a lesson that might just open your heart in ways joy never could. This is the path. This is the wisdom. This is how we begin to transform suffering, not by erasing it, but by embracing it as one of life's greatest and most sacred teachers. 6. Protect your peace through sacred stillness. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your energy, your reaction, stillness becomes not just a luxury, but a form of quiet rebellion. We live in an age of noise. Not just the noise of sound, but the noise of constant thinking, over-analysis, emotional chaos, scrolling screens, and a never-ending stream of pressure to do more, fix more, prove more, be more. And in this relentless motion, something sacred is lost, not because it is gone, but because we have forgotten how to return to it. That sacred thing is your peace, that steady, quiet, grounded presence that exists beneath the surface of your daily life, buried under deadlines, disappointments, distractions, and desires. And unless you protect it, unless you create space for it, it will be drowned out by the noise of the world. Buddhism teaches us that peace is not something we find outside ourselves. It is not something that others give us, or that arrives when everything around us is finally calm. Peace is a state we cultivate by returning inward, by learning to rest in the quiet presence that has always been within us. And the gateway to that peace is stillness. Not stillness as in doing nothing, but stillness as a sacred act of presence, of return, of honoring the silence that the modern world has taught us to fear. Stillness is the space where your soul can breathe again. It is the quiet place where your nervous system begins to unclench, where the noise of your thoughts begins to soften, where your heart can finally whisper its truth without being drowned out by your to-do list or the expectations of others. In stillness, you remember that you are not here to keep performing for the world. You are here to be, to exist, to witness life with full presence. Not as a machine, not as a reaction, but as a sacred, aware, breathing part of this universe. But to access this stillness, you must protect it. You must make time for it like you would make time for a dear friend who brings out the best in you. It could be as simple as waking up 10 minutes earlier and sitting in silence before the world begins to speak. It could be stepping outside at night and looking at the stars with no purpose other than to feel. It could be placing your hand over your heart and taking 5 deep, intentional breaths when the stress becomes too much. It could be turning off your phone for an hour each day, not because the world will collapse without you, but because your soul might collapse if you never unplug. These small rituals of stillness are not small at all. They are sacred. They are a returning to what is real beneath what is loud. They remind you that your worth is not in your productivity, your reputation, or your ability to keep up with everyone else. Your worth is in your presence. And the more stillness you cultivate, the more you begin to notice things you've forgotten. The sound of your own breath, the texture of sunlight on your skin, the subtle rise and fall of your emotions, the gentle truth that peace is not something far away, it is something that was simply waiting for you to be still enough to hear it. In Buddhist monastic life, stillness is not seen as inactivity, it is seen as the ground for all meaningful action. A monk does not rush, he does not multitask, he pours tea with full attention. He walks with mindful awareness. He speaks slowly and with intention, because he knows that every movement can be sacred if it arises from inner stillness. This way of living is not only possible in monasteries, it is possible in your home, your day, your breath. You do not need silence around you to experience stillness within. You need intention, you need awareness, and you need the courage to step away from the chaos, not forever, but long enough to remember who you are beneath it. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the absence of force. It is the release of resistance. It is the place where healing happens, not because you are trying so hard, but because you have stopped trying to force anything. You have softened. You have opened. You have returned. Stillness allows your wounds to breathe. It gives your heart space to process the grief you didn't have time to feel. It helps you listen deeply to what you really need, not what the world says you should want, but what your soul is quietly aching for. It helps you recover parts of yourself that were lost in the rush. And perhaps most importantly, it helps you become whole again, not by adding anything new, but by removing the noise that made you feel incomplete. So protect your stillness as if it were a sacred flame. Do not let the winds of urgency, opinion, distraction, or judgment blow it out. When life becomes loud, return to it. When your mind becomes chaotic, return to it. When the world pulls at you from every direction, return to it. Because in that stillness, you do not just find peace, you remember that you are peace. Stillness is the home within yourself, where nothing needs to be different, and yet everything becomes clearer. It is the refuge where your heart can rest, your body can soften, and your spirit can remember that it was never broken, only buried. And when you return to the world from that place, not rushed, not reactive, but rooted in presence, you do not just move differently, you live differently, you listen differently, you love differently. You respond to pain with understanding. You meet the moment, not with panic, but with deep, grounded calm. This is the gift of sacred stillness. It is not a retreat from life. It is the practice that makes life whole again. 7. Remember. You were never broken, only becoming. When life begins to collapse around you, when people walk away without explanation, when dreams fall apart and you're left holding the shattered pieces of what you once believed was solid, it's easy to come to one painful conclusion: I must be broken. The weight of disappointment, the sting of failure, the silence of abandonment, these things don't just hurt your circumstances, they begin to seep inward, poisoning the way you see yourself. You don't just think the situation is wrong, you start to believe you are wrong, that something inside you must be flawed, that you've fallen too far to return to who you used to be, that perhaps healing isn't for you, that perhaps peace was never meant for someone like you. But this is not the truth. It is only the voice of suffering, echoing in the hollow chambers of the heart, where clarity has been clouded by fear, grief, and the illusion of separation. And Buddhism, in its deep compassion and profound clarity, reminds us gently yet firmly, you were never broken. Not even once. You were only becoming. The pain you feel, the weight you carry, the confusion that clouds your vision, all of these are not signs of failure. They are signs of transformation, just as the caterpillar must dissolve entirely before becoming a butterfly, just as the seed must fall apart in the dark soil before it can sprout, you too must pass through phases where everything feels unclear, raw, and painful. But these are not the signs of destruction. They are the signs of sacred rebirth. The process is messy. It is full of unknowing. But it is never meaningless. The world teaches us that strength is loud, polished, and visible. But Buddhism teaches something different. It says true strength is quiet. It is the choice to stay soft in a world that demands hardness. It is the courage to sit with your suffering without rushing to escape it. It is the wisdom to know that being lost is not the end of the path. It is often the very doorway to awakening, and you do not have to wait until you're fixed to be whole. Because wholeness has never been about perfection. It is about presence. It is about meeting yourself exactly where you are, with gentleness, honesty, and unconditional acceptance. When you look in the mirror during your hardest moments, you may see someone tired, confused, and uncertain. You may see eyes that no longer shine like they once did. You may feel disconnected from the version of yourself you once loved, but just because something feels unfamiliar does not mean it is unworthy. Just because your heart has been through war does not mean it has lost its ability to feel peace. In fact, it is the very tenderness of your scars that make you capable of deeper empathy, deeper patience, deeper wisdom. Pain doesn't take your worth from you, it reveals it. You were never lost. You were simply shedding layers that no longer serve your becoming. Even when you feel furthest from your path, you are still walking it. Even when you can't see the light, the flame is still flickering inside you. Even in moments of complete emotional collapse, there is a quiet part of you, a still center that remains untouched by it all. Buddhism teaches that this part of you, the observer, the awareness, the silent witness, was never hurt, never damaged, never broken. It is the mountain beneath the storm. It is the calm eye in the center of the cyclone. It is who you really are. And when you remember this truth, even just for a breath, you begin to come home to yourself. Coming home does not mean everything is solved. It doesn't mean the pain vanishes. It means that you stop rejecting your own experience. It means you stop abandoning yourself in your hardest moments. It means you sit beside your sadness as if it were an old friend, and you say, "You can stay here for a while. I won't run from you." It means you learn to speak kindly to yourself, not just when you're doing well, but especially when you're falling apart. Because the practice of self-compassion is not conditional. It is the medicine you must learn to offer yourself again and again as you navigate this imperfect, sacred, mysterious life. And one day, slowly, quietly, you will look back and see that the very things that nearly broke you actually remade you. Not into someone new, but into someone truer, someone more rooted, someone less afraid of uncertainty, someone who no longer seeks approval in every room because they have learned to sit in stillness and feel at peace in their own company, someone who knows how to hold pain with both hands, not as a burden, but as a teacher. Someone who is no longer ashamed of their story, but honored to have survived it with softness still intact. You will see that what you called broken was simply the cracking open of an old shell, the shedding of what you had outgrown. And what emerged from that shedding was not something flawed. It was something more real, more honest, more whole, because wholeness doesn't mean nothing is missing. It means nothing is being rejected. It means you hold space for your light and your shadows, for your joy and your grief, for your confusion and your clarity. It means you stop waiting for perfection and instead learn to live deeply in this moment, as it is. So when life tries to tear you apart, and your mind tells you that you're too far gone, too tired, too broken, pause. Place your hand gently over your heart. Close your eyes. Breathe, and remind yourself of this truth. I am not broken. I am becoming. Let those words become your prayer. Let them carry you through your darkest nights. Let them echo within your spirit when the world becomes too loud. Because even when you doubt it, even when you forget it, the truth remains. You are whole. You are enough. You are the sacred unfolding of something beautiful, and your becoming is not something to fear. It is something to honor. 8. Nothing stays forever, and that is why you can endure. When life feels overwhelming, when pain settles into your chest like an unwelcome guest refusing to leave, when you wake up with a heaviness you can't explain and go to sleep feeling like nothing has changed, it's easy to believe that this is your new reality, that the sadness will stay forever, that the confusion, the loneliness, the stress will never leave. It becomes a cycle, one that tells you this feeling is permanent, that you are stuck, that joy has forgotten your name. And in these moments, your spirit can feel tired in a way the body cannot express. You begin to wonder if healing is even possible. But here is one of the most liberating truths Buddhism has ever offered the world: impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. No emotion, no situation, no state of mind, not the deepest sorrow, nor the greatest joy. All things arise, change, and pass. Everything that exists is in motion, alive in one moment, shifting in the next. This includes the pain you feel right now. This includes the grief, the fear, the loneliness. They are not permanent fixtures in your soul. They are visitors, teachers, waves passing through the ocean of your being. When the Buddha taught about suffering, he never promised a life free of it, but he promised understanding. And in understanding, he offered freedom. To see clearly is to realize that just as the storm rises, so too it will fall. Just as the wound opens, so too it begins to close. Just as the darkest night arrives, so too does the morning. You do not have to fight everything. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait, to breathe, to be still, and to remember this too shall pass. It is not a cliché, it is a spiritual truth. You've seen it before. Look back at your life. Think of the moments you thought would break you completely, the losses that felt unbearable, the nights you cried silently so no one would hear. At the time, it felt like it would last forever, but it didn't. You're still here. You carried yourself through what you once believed was impossible. Maybe not without pain, maybe not without scars, but you made it, and that alone proves something. You are more resilient than your mind wants you to believe. Impermanence is not a curse. It is one of life's greatest gifts, because if nothing lasts forever, that means you are always free to begin again. You are not doomed to be who you were yesterday. You are not trapped in today's emotions. You are not defined by the pain you felt last year or even this morning. Every breath is a doorway to something new. Every moment holds the potential to turn the page, even if only slightly. And the more you align yourself with this truth, the more peaceful you become. Not because your life is free from suffering, but because your heart is free from clinging to it. But impermanence isn't just about pain passing. It's about learning to truly live while you're here, to not take joy for granted, to not wait for the perfect moment to appreciate something. When you understand that everything is fleeting, you begin to treasure the small things with sacred awareness. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of leaves brushing in the wind, the brief but beautiful smile of a stranger, the voice of someone you love, the silence after a deep breath. You stop sleeping through life and begin to notice it, moment by moment. Impermanence awakens you. Still, impermanence can feel scary too, especially when it takes away things you wanted to keep: relationships, stability, youth, health, dreams. It hurts to lose what we love. It's painful to let go. But the pain is not a punishment. It is the cost of holding something meaningful in a temporary world. Everything that comes into your life does so with a hidden agreement. I will be with you for a time, but not forever. That includes people, experiences, successes, and even suffering. They all come, they all go, and in between, they shape you. The beauty of this truth is that it gives you permission to breathe even in your most painful seasons. Because even when it doesn't feel like it, the season will change. What's heavy now will become lighter. What's unclear now will make sense in hindsight. What's hurting now will soften. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force healing. You just need to sit with yourself, gently, lovingly, with the quiet trust that nothing stays forever. Not even this. In Buddhist monasteries, monks are taught to meditate on impermanence every day, not to become sad or detached, but to become more awake. They reflect on the changing nature of all things so that they don't take peace for granted and don't cling to what must pass. They walk slowly. They eat mindfully. They speak softly. They live in rhythm with the rise and fall of life. And you can bring this into your life too. You don't have to wear robes or live in silence. You just have to pause, breathe, and remember that everything changes, even you. This truth is what makes it possible to hold on when life tries to tear you apart, not because you have all the answers, not because everything feels okay, but because you know that even this will evolve. Pain will not be your forever companion. This moment is not the whole of your story. You are in the middle of a chapter, not the end of the book. So when the days are dark and your strength feels like it's fading, hold this truth close. Nothing stays forever. And that is why you can endure. What you are going through is temporary. What you are becoming is timeless. This too shall pass. And when it does, you will look back and see not just how much you survived, but how much you grew, how much wiser you became, how much softer your heart opened, and how deeply you began to live. Because impermanence, when truly understood, is not something to fear. It is something to bow to. It is something to thank. For without it, growth would not be possible, healing would not be necessary, and peace would never feel so sacred. 9. Real peace comes from alignment, not escape. When life becomes difficult, when everything begins to feel like too much, there is a strong temptation to escape, and it may not always look like running away. Sometimes escape wears the disguise of busyness, of distraction, of overthinking, of keeping yourself constantly occupied just so you don't have to feel what's beneath the surface. Sometimes escape is numbing yourself with screens or noise or fantasy. Sometimes it's pretending to be okay when you're not, putting on a smile because facing the truth would hurt too much. But whatever form it takes, escape is not the path to peace. It is a pause, not a solution. It offers momentary relief, not lasting healing. In Buddhist wisdom, there is deep understanding for why people run. Life is heavy. The pain we carry can be ancient. The emotions that rise are sometimes too overwhelming to fully hold all at once. But the invitation is not to run faster. It is to slow down, to turn inward, and to ask yourself, what part of me have I left behind? Peace does not come when you finally manage to silence the discomfort. It comes when you return to yourself, fully, completely, without fear. True peace is not something you chase in the outside world. It's not found in the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next distraction that keeps your mind busy. True peace is born from alignment. It is the quiet, steady calm that grows when your thoughts, your actions, and your inner truth are no longer at war with each other. When what you feel is not buried, when what you believe is not compromised, when the way you live gently reflects the stillness of your soul. But alignment cannot be forced. It is not about being perfect or having your life figured out. Alignment begins when you choose to tell yourself the truth, when you stop pretending, when you sit down in stillness and allow everything you've been avoiding to finally breathe. The sadness, the resentment, the longing, the grief, the questions, the fatigue. You let them come, not to drown you, but to be seen. Because most of the suffering in our lives comes not from the pain itself, but from how much we resist feeling it. What you resist grows. What you welcome begins to loosen. To be aligned means to be honest. It means to stop abandoning your own needs for the sake of others' comfort. It means to speak kindly to yourself when your mind tries to repeat old, critical stories. It means to move through the world not by what the world expects, but by what your inner wisdom whispers. And that whisper is often very soft. You cannot hear it through chaos. You cannot hear it through noise. You must become still enough to listen. Imagine for a moment a still pond. When the surface is disturbed by wind, by rain, by stones thrown into it, you cannot see clearly. The reflection becomes broken. But when the pond is calm, you can see the sky, the trees, the stars, all mirrored perfectly. Your inner world is like that pond. When your thoughts and actions are out of sync with your truth, everything becomes noisy, distorted, and confusing. But when you return to alignment, when you live, speak, and act from a place of inner honesty, your reflection becomes clear again. And with that clarity comes peace. Alignment is not a destination. It is a daily practice. Some days you'll feel in harmony, other days you'll lose your way. That's okay. The key is to notice, to gently ask yourself throughout the day, is this action coming from fear or from truth? Is this thought aligned with love or with judgment? Am I saying yes because I mean it or because I'm afraid to say no? These simple questions can guide you back, not to some ideal version of yourself, but to your real, raw, beautifully imperfect truth. And the beauty of living in alignment is that even when life outside feels chaotic, something inside remains steady. You no longer have to pretend. You no longer have to please everyone. You no longer need to hide parts of yourself in order to feel accepted, because the acceptance you've been craving from the world begins to grow from within. You accept your confusion. You accept your process. You accept your wounds and your wisdom, your light and your shadow. You stop waiting for peace to arrive. You realize it has been waiting for you to come home. In the Buddhist path, alignment is deeply tied to the Eightfold Path, a guide for ethical, mindful, compassionate living. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. These are not rules to punish you. They are reminders. Reminders that peace comes when you walk with integrity, when you live in harmony with your values, when your outer life begins to reflect your inner wisdom. This doesn't mean your life becomes easy, but it does become real. And in realness, there is freedom. So the next time you feel the urge to escape, pause. Ask yourself, what is this moment calling me to feel? What am I running from? And then, instead of turning away, gently turn toward it. Sit with the discomfort, not to suffer in it, but to understand it. Because once you understand it, once you let it move through you instead of locking it away, you begin to come back into alignment. And from that alignment, peace grows, not as a concept, not as a fleeting feeling, but as a way of being. Let your life be lived from the inside out, not the outside in. Let your truth be your compass. Let your heart lead, even when it's tender. Let your actions reflect your deepest values, not your deepest fears. And most of all, let go of the belief that peace means perfection. Peace means honesty. It means harmony. It means choosing yourself, not in selfishness, but in wholeness. Because when you stop escaping and start aligning, you will find that peace was never far away. It was simply waiting for you to stop running and to finally sit in the quiet truth of who you already are. The deepest strength is found in softness. When we speak of strength, the world often brings forth images of unshakable endurance, powerful dominance, thick skin, and the refusal to bend under pressure. We are taught that to survive hardship, we must harden ourselves. We must tighten the jaw, grit the teeth, and push forward no matter how heavy the burden. But in the eyes of Buddhist wisdom, this definition of strength is incomplete, perhaps even misguided, because strength that depends on resistance eventually becomes brittle. It may endure for a time, but it breaks when pushed beyond its limit. Real strength, the kind that survives life's deepest storms and emerges more whole, is not rigid. It is soft. It is flexible. It moves with life, not against it. It absorbs without being consumed, and it bends without breaking. This is the paradox at the heart of Buddhist insight. The strongest tree is not the one that stands stiff in the wind, but the one that bends with it. The bamboo plant, often used as a symbol in Zen teachings, thrives not because it resists the storm, but because it moves in harmony with it. It doesn't snap, it sways, and when the storm passes, it stands tall again. This image is not merely poetic. It is a profound teaching about the nature of resilience, the kind that doesn't come from force, but from wisdom, from softness. But softness is not weakness. This is where many people become confused. Softness does not mean passivity. It does not mean that you let others walk over you, or that you lack boundaries, or that you deny your truth in the name of peace. Softness means presence. It means awareness. It means approaching yourself and the world without armor. It is the strength to sit with your pain without numbing it, the strength to forgive when it would be easier to hate, the strength to cry without shame, the strength to remain kind in a world that often chooses cruelty, the strength to meet life not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a teacher to be listened to. This form of strength grows in quiet places, within the heart that has broken and learned how to remain open, within the soul that has been scarred and still chooses to love, within the mind that has learned not to escape discomfort, but to breathe through it with mindfulness. It is the strength of the mother who rises again and again for her children, even when no one sees her exhaustion. It is the strength of the monk who spends years in stillness, training the mind not to react, but to respond. It is the strength of the grieving soul who chooses to live with tenderness, despite knowing the sting of loss. True strength is not about how much you can carry, but about how gracefully you can let go. Letting go of expectations, letting go of control, letting go of the need to be seen as strong, letting go of stories that no longer serve you. In fact, the act of letting go itself is one of the most courageous things a person can do, because it requires trust. Trust in the present moment, trust in the path, trust in the unfolding of life beyond your limited understanding. And it requires humility, the kind that admits, I don't need to hold everything together to be worthy. I can release, I can soften, and still I will be okay. In Buddhist meditation practice, this softness becomes a gateway to awakening. You sit not to dominate the mind, but to befriend it. You don't battle your thoughts. You observe them. You hold them gently, like fragile objects placed in your hands by the universe. You allow them to come, you allow them to go, and in doing so, you begin to understand something essential. What you resist persists, what you embrace transforms. When you approach your pain with softness instead of resistance, it begins to loosen. When you sit with your anger with curiosity instead of judgment, it begins to dissolve. When you meet your sadness with compassion instead of shame, it begins to teach. Softness opens doors that force cannot. It opens your heart, not with a hammer, but with a breath. It invites healing to enter, not by fixing you, but by reminding you that you were never broken. It allows you to connect with others more deeply, because you no longer need to posture or protect. You can simply be human, imperfect, real. Yet embracing softness in a harsh world is not easy. Many of us have been taught to toughen up, to suppress our feelings, to always appear in control. We fear vulnerability because we associate it with danger. We were told to be strong, but only in ways that looked invincible, and so we arm ourselves with sarcasm, with anger, with detachment, with busyness. We wear masks. We silence our inner child. We hide our wounds so well that sometimes we forget they're there. But healing doesn't happen in that armor. Healing happens when you take it off. Taking it off doesn't mean collapsing. It means allowing yourself to be held, not just by others, but by life itself. It means giving yourself permission to breathe without having to prove anything. It means recognizing that your worth isn't tied to your productivity, your strength, or your performance. Your worth is inherent, and the more you soften into that truth, the more peace you will feel. Not because life stops being difficult, but because you stop making war against yourself. Softness also allows you to see the suffering in others more clearly. When you are no longer trapped in your own internal fight, you become more available to others. You notice the silent pain in someone's eyes. You feel the tension behind their anger. You recognize the sadness hidden beneath their coldness. And instead of reacting with judgment, you respond with compassion. You say less. You listen more. You become a safe space, not just for yourself, but for others. This is the ripple effect of true inner strength. It doesn't dominate, it nourishes. It doesn't shout, it soothes. In the Buddhist tradition, bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who choose to stay in the cycle of suffering to help others, are often depicted with serene faces, gentle hands, and open posture. They are not armored warriors. They are compassionate protectors. Their strength lies in their softness. Their power lies in their ability to stay open, even while witnessing the suffering of the world. And you don't have to be a monk or a bodhisattva to embody this. You only need to return to your breath, again and again. In the moments when life tries to harden you, choose to soften. When anger rises, pause and place your hand over your heart. When sadness visits, let it sit beside you without rushing it away. When fear knocks, open the door and ask it what it needs. These small acts of softness are revolutionary. They are the practice. They are the path. So the next time you feel the pressure to appear strong, to hide your emotions, to pretend you're okay, to keep it all together, take a step back. Ask yourself, What if real strength is not in holding on, but in letting go? What if it's not in closing off, but in opening up? What if it's not in being untouched by life, but in being touched deeply and still choosing to love, to feel, to stay? Let this be your strength, the strength to remain soft in a world that often forgets softness, the strength to feel fully and still rise, the strength to sit with your humanity, not to escape it, but to embrace it with reverence. Because within your softness lies a power that nothing can take from you, a power that doesn't need to shout to be heard, a power that doesn't seek control but lives in alignment, a power that simply is. This is the deepest strength, the kind that cannot be broken because it doesn't resist the flow of life. It moves with it, it learns from it, it dances with the storm and still finds stillness within. And in that stillness, in that open-hearted presence, you will discover the truth, that peace is not found in winning the fight against life. It is found in laying down the armor, sitting with the breath, and remembering that your softness was never a flaw. It was always your superpower. The moment you let go is the moment you return to life. There is a point in every journey, quiet, often unannounced, when a deep and subtle shift begins to happen inside. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand announcements. It comes like the first light of dawn, slowly pushing away the night. It is the moment you stop clenching, the moment you release the breath you didn't realize you'd been holding, the moment you stop fighting what is and allow life, just as it is, to be enough. This moment is called letting go, not a one-time event, but a sacred turning, a decision, a surrender, a homecoming. Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering is clinging, our tight, desperate grasp on people, outcomes, identities, expectations, and even our pain. We hold on to what has already left. We try to control what is uncontrollable. We fight against change, against truth, against impermanence. And in doing so, we create a tension that becomes unbearable, not just emotionally, but physically. Our shoulders tighten, our hearts close, our breath shortens. We stop flowing with life, and instead begin resisting it at every turn. But what if the pain you feel is not just from what happened, but from the way you are holding it? When you truly begin to understand this, not as a concept, but as a lived experience, you start to soften. You realize that no amount of resistance will undo the past, that no amount of worry will control the future, that no amount of replaying the same wound will bring you peace. You begin to see that holding on is not strength, it is the source of suffering. And letting go is not weakness. It is the quiet wisdom that says, I no longer need to carry this. Letting go is not about forgetting. It's not about erasing your memories or pretending you were never hurt. It's about choosing to free yourself from the chains that bind you to a version of reality that no longer serves your growth. You do not let go because you are over it. You let go because holding on is costing you your presence, your joy, your peace, and your life. So how do you begin to let go? It starts with awareness. Sit with yourself. Notice what you are still gripping inside. What person, memory, regret, or expectation are you still wrapping your emotional arms around? What are you afraid will happen if you release it? Often, the fear is that letting go means losing a part of yourself. But in truth, letting go is how you return to yourself. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not your attachment. You are something far deeper, something unchanging beneath the waves. In meditation practice, you begin to observe the breath, not to control it, but to be with it. Inhale, exhale, again and again. You begin to notice how the mind clings, how it chases, how it judges, and you don't fight it, you simply watch. Over time, you learn to release each thought, each image, each craving, not with force, but with grace, like placing a leaf on a river and watching it drift away. This is the practice of letting go in its most sacred form, not a dramatic act, but a gentle return. You begin to realize that letting go is not an abandonment of care. You can love and still release. You can forgive without excusing. You can feel deeply and still walk away. Letting go means choosing inner alignment over outer approval. It means choosing peace over resentment. It means choosing truth over illusion. There are things you must learn to let go of to reclaim your life. Let go of the need to be understood by everyone. Not all minds can see your heart clearly. Not all hearts are meant to walk beside yours. Let go of the old identity that was shaped by your trauma. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you that was built for survival. You are allowed to become softer, freer, lighter. Let go of what you expected life to look like by now. The timeline you held in your mind was never a contract with the universe. Life is not late. You are not behind. Let go of the guilt that keeps replaying the past. What you did or didn't do. What you said or failed to say. If you knew better, you would have done better. And even if you knew, perhaps you weren't strong enough at the time. That too is human. Let go of relationships that make you shrink, that silence your truth, that feed your self-doubt. Love is not supposed to hurt like that, and peace is not supposed to cost you your self-respect. Let go of the idea that you must always be healing. Sometimes the most powerful healing is to stop fixing and start living. You are not a project, you are a soul. And most importantly, let go of the belief that letting go means losing. Letting go is not a loss, it is a return to the present, a return to yourself, a return to life here and now, not someday in a future you are trying to force. The more you let go, the more you begin to notice something beautiful. Life flows better without your constant control. Relationships either deepen or dissolve when you stop forcing them. Emotions come and go more gently when you stop clinging to them. You no longer need to grasp for peace. You begin to realize it was always there, just hidden beneath the weight you were carrying. Letting go creates space, and in that space, something ancient and wise awakens. You feel the ground beneath your feet again. You hear the birds more clearly. You feel the sun on your skin as if for the first time. You taste your food with gratitude. You breathe, not from the top of your lungs, but deeply, fully, like someone who finally remembers what it feels like to be alive. Letting go also means letting go of resistance to the present moment. So often, we are not really here. We are elsewhere, in regret, in fantasy, in worry. But the present moment is the only place where life is happening. And if you are not here, you are not truly living. To let go is to surrender to now, to drop the need for life to be different and instead ask, how can I meet this moment fully? This does not mean you don't take action. It does not mean you accept injustice or settle for less than you deserve. It means you act from clarity, not desperation, from stillness, not fear. You let go of the noise so that your actions are aligned, not reactive, but intentional. Letting go is not the end, it is the beginning. It is how you empty the cup so it can be filled again. It is how you clear the soil so new seeds can grow. It is how you move forward, not by dragging the past behind you, but by walking with open hands. And when you let go, something remarkable happens. You begin to attract peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, love that is free instead of love that is conditional, because your energy shifts. You are no longer chasing, you are simply being, and in that being, life flows. The Buddha taught that everything that has a beginning has an end, that attachment leads to suffering, that peace comes not from getting what you want, but from letting go of the craving that says you must have it. You begin to understand that to let go is not to lose your life, it is to find it again, not the life that is constructed from fear and grasping, but the life that flows from presence, simplicity, and deep spiritual freedom. So pause, breathe, scan your inner world gently. Ask yourself, what am I holding that no longer needs to be held? And as you feel it, name it, witness it, release it, not in anger, not in haste, but in compassion. Say to it, thank you for what you've taught me, and now I let you go. Letting go is not an act of the mind alone. It is an opening of the heart. It is a path, a practice, a lifelong dance between holding and releasing, between becoming and returning, between remembering and forgetting and remembering again. And every time you let go, you come home. You come home to what is real, what is sacred, what is always here, your breath, your awareness, your being. Letting go is how the lotus rises from the mud. It is how the cloud drifts from the mountain. It is how the bird learns to fly. And it is how you, yes, you, will rise again, not in spite of all you've been through, but because of it. Silence is not emptiness. It is where life begins to speak. There is something we all long for in the midst of chaos. It's not always more answers. It's not always more control. Sometimes it's not even comfort. It's silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. The kind of silence that isn't empty but full of clarity, full of depth, full of a kind of truth that words can never fully reach. And yet in our modern world, silence has become the rarest of gifts. We are constantly surrounded by noise, conversations, notifications, obligations, the hum of technology, the echo of our own racing thoughts. Even when we sit alone, the world continues to whisper through our screens. Even when no one is speaking, our minds continue shouting. We have become strangers to silence, and in doing so, we have become strangers to ourselves. Buddhism does not treat silence as an accident. It does not treat it as a void to be filled. It honors it as a sacred space, a portal, a home, a medicine. In the stillness of silence, we are finally able to hear what life has been trying to tell us all along. Not the surface-level noise of our ego, but the deeper whispers of our being. The soul does not shout. Truth does not demand attention. Peace does not compete with drama. They wait, silently, until we are ready to listen. But listening requires stillness. And stillness begins with the courage to turn inward, to unplug, to stop performing, to stop seeking, to simply be. This is harder than it sounds, because silence can feel confronting at first. When you remove the distractions, what's left is you, and all that you've been avoiding. The sadness, the anger, the grief, the truth you buried beneath years of noise. It all begins to rise in silence, and this is why so many fear it. But here is what you must know. What rises in silence is not your enemy. It is your path. It is the raw material of awakening. Imagine a still lake early in the morning. The water reflects everything perfectly, the trees, the sky, the clouds. But the moment it is disturbed even slightly, the reflection is broken. The same is true of your mind. When it is filled with noise, you cannot see clearly. But in silence, your inner landscape becomes visible. You begin to see your patterns, your wounds, your hopes, your fears. And more importantly, you begin to see the awareness behind them all, the one who watches, the one who does not react, the one who is simply present. This presence is your true self, not the identity constructed by society, by trauma, by comparison, but the self that simply is, awake, compassionate, calm, and silence is its natural language. In silence, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to defend or justify. You don't have to fix or perform. You just rest, you allow, you return. And in this return, healing happens. Not because you force it, but because you create space for it. In Buddhist monastic life, silence is not treated as punishment. It is a gift. Monks often observe periods of noble silence, not speaking for days or even weeks. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they are learning to listen more deeply. listening not just to others, but to the breath, to the heartbeat, to the sensations in the body, to the mind's movement, to the rising and falling of emotions. They are training themselves not to react, but to witness, not to escape, but to sit. And in this sitting, something beautiful begins to emerge, a kind of quiet joy, a serenity that doesn't depend on circumstances, a knowing that doesn't need words. This is what silence offers you, not escape, but embodiment, not emptiness, but fullness. And you don't have to be in a monastery to find it. You can begin right here, where you are. In the early morning before the world wakes, in the stillness of your room at night, in the moments between conversations, in the space between thoughts. All you need is a willingness to be present, to sit, to breathe, to listen. Start with a few minutes a day. No phone, no music, no agenda, just sit with yourself. At first, your mind may resist. It may flood you with noise. It may demand you to get up, to check something, to do something. That is okay. Let the noise come. Let it pass. Do not try to silence it with force. Just observe. Just breathe. Like clouds in the sky, let every thought rise and float away. Your job is not to stop the thoughts. Your job is to stop following them, to stop getting lost in their stories, to simply watch. Over time, the space between the thoughts will grow, the breath will deepen, the body will soften, and you will begin to feel something sacred, not excitement, not ecstasy, but peace, a quiet, grounded, expansive peace. The kind that reminds you that no matter how loud life gets, you always have this place within you. You always have access to this inner silence. And once you taste it, truly taste it, you will begin to crave it, not as an escape from life, but as a return to life. Because it is only from silence that true action can emerge. Not reaction, not impulse, but wisdom-guided response. The more you sit in silence, the more you begin to respond to life differently. You stop rushing to speak. You listen more. You react less. You speak with more care. You walk more mindfully. You become less concerned with appearances and more attuned to authenticity. Silence also deepens your connection to others. When you learn to be silent within, you begin to see others more clearly. You listen without waiting to speak. You feel their energy. You hold space instead of trying to fix. And in this space, true intimacy is born, not through words, but through presence. Even nature teaches us this. The tree does not speak, yet it teaches patience. The mountain does not move, yet it teaches stability. The river does not shout, yet it teaches flow. The moon does not argue, yet it teaches presence. All of these teachers are silent, and yet they speak louder than any noise. So let silence become your sanctuary. Let it be the space you return to when the world becomes too much. Let it hold you, cleanse you, ground you. Not because silence changes the world around you, but because it changes how you meet it. In the end, silence is not the absence of life. It is the place where life begins to speak, not in the language of words, but in the language of being, of breath, of presence, of awareness. Let your life be rooted in that silence. Let your words rise from that silence. Let your peace be protected by that silence. And when you forget, when the noise becomes too loud, return to it again. It will always be there, waiting for you. Because silence is not a place you go to. It is who you are when everything else falls away. You were always enough, you just forgot who you are. There is a quiet sorrow that lives in so many hearts, hidden behind smiles, accomplishments, and daily routines. It is not always loud. It doesn't always show itself in breakdowns or tears, but it lingers in the background like a shadow, subtle, persistent, and heavy. It is the belief that you are not enough, that no matter how much you do, how hard you try, how much you give, or how far you run, you are still somehow lacking, that something in you is not quite right, not quite lovable, not quite worthy. This belief does not come from the truth of your being. It comes from years of forgetting, from a lifetime of looking outward for something that has always been within. From the moment you were born, the world began shaping you. Parents, teachers, culture, society, all with their expectations, standards, and unspoken messages. Some praised you only when you succeeded. Some withdrew love when you failed. Some compared you to others, even with good intentions. And little by little, you began to measure your worth by external things, by approval, by attention, by results, by how well you could fit the mold others made for you. And the more you did that, the more distant you became from your true self. You began to live a life shaped by should, must, and not enough. And over time, you forgot who you were before the world told you who to be. But Buddhism reminds us of something sacred and deeply healing. Your worth is not something you earn. It is something you are. You are not valuable because of your achievements. You are not lovable because of your beauty, your status, or your productivity. You are enough simply because you exist. You are worthy simply because you breathe. This truth is not meant to flatter you. It is meant to set you free. Your true nature, known in Buddhism as Buddha nature, is not something you acquire by becoming better. It is something you return to by becoming still. It is the part of you that has always been whole, untouched by your mistakes, unshaken by your past, and unburdened by the world's labels. This is not an idea. It is a reality. A direct experience that arises when the mind grows quiet and the heart opens fully. In meditation, when the noise fades and the ego softens, you can feel it, that quiet presence, that awareness beneath all you're doing. That is who you are, not broken, not flawed, but already whole. You don't have to prove this to anyone. You don't have to earn it. You only have to remember. But how do you remember who you truly are when you've spent so long living as someone else? It begins with compassion. Not the kind you give to others alone, but the kind you turn inward. It means meeting yourself, not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. It means pausing when the inner critic begins to speak and asking, whose voice is this? Is this really mine? Or was it given to me by someone else's pain? Often, the voice that tells you you're not enough is not yours. It is an echo of someone else's wound. And once you recognize that, you can stop believing it. Start noticing the ways you abandon yourself every day. When you say yes, when you want to say no. When you dismiss your own feelings to make others comfortable. When you criticize your reflection in the mirror. When you apologize for existing. These moments are not small. They are signals. Signals that you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is fragile. But it's not. Your worth is the sky. Everything else, opinions, failures, roles, appearances, is just weather. Buddhist practice invites you to return to that sky, to sit with yourself, not to change who you are, but to remember who you've always been. In every breath, you are being invited to return. With every inhale, a homecoming. With every exhale, a release of all that is not you. You are not your mistakes. You are not your past. You are not your productivity. You are not your reputation. You are not your trauma. You are not your roles. You are not your fears. You are the awareness that sees all of these without being defined by any of them. You are the stillness beneath the storm, the light behind the cloud, the peace behind the thought. And in that realization, there is a softening. You no longer need to strive so desperately. You no longer need to prove yourself to everyone you meet. You no longer need to carry the weight of impossible expectations. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be. You are allowed to exist as you are. But this does not mean complacency. It does not mean you stop growing. True self-worth does not prevent growth. It empowers it. When you believe you are not enough, your growth is rooted in shame. You try to change yourself because you feel broken. But when you know you are already enough, your growth is rooted in love. You grow because it is your nature to evolve. You grow because you are curious, alive and ready, not because you are unworthy. So release the idea that your healing must be earned. Release the belief that love must be proven. Release the voice that tells you you're behind. There is no timeline. There is no race. There is only now, this breath, this moment, this sacred opportunity to come home to yourself again. And as you do, you will begin to live differently. You will make decisions not from fear, but from alignment. You will speak not to impress, but to express. You will love not to be loved back, but because love is who you are. You will stop chasing worth in people, places, and achievements. You will start feeling worthy before, during, and after every experience. This shift changes everything. It brings peace into the way you walk, softness into the way you breathe, stillness into the way you show up in the world. It also allows you to see others differently. When you know you are enough, you no longer compete. You no longer compare. You no longer need to diminish others to elevate yourself. You see their enoughness too. You meet them in the space beneath identity, where only presence remains. And from that space, real connection grows, not built on fear or performance, but on truth. In Buddhist terms, this is compassion, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. When you see your own suffering clearly, you begin to see it in others. And when you remember your own inherent worth, you begin to remember it for the world. This is not selfish. This is service. The most powerful thing you can offer the world is a version of yourself that no longer seeks wholeness outside of you. Because once you stop trying to become enough, you become free to become real. And that is the most beautiful kind of freedom. Not the freedom to escape, but the freedom to rest, to breathe, to belong, to take up space without guilt, to speak without shame, to walk without hiding, to live without performing, to love without conditions, to simply exist and know that you were always enough. You just forgot. Now it's time to remember. Suffering is not the enemy. It is the doorway to awakening. At some point in every life, suffering arrives like an uninvited guest. It does not knock gently or wait until we are ready. It comes crashing in, sometimes through the loss of someone we love, sometimes through betrayal, through sickness, failure, uncertainty, or inner despair. And when it comes, it shakes everything we thought we understood. It rips open the heart, unsettles the mind, and brings us face to face with a question many spend their entire lives trying to avoid. Why must we suffer? That question doesn't always arise with words. Sometimes it's a silent scream. Sometimes it's the ache behind your ribs when you lie awake at night. Sometimes it's the sense that no matter what you achieve, something inside still feels hollow. Whether the pain is loud or quiet, obvious or invisible, it becomes one of the deepest human experiences and one of the most misunderstood. Most people try to outrun their suffering. They push it down, they numb it, they deny it, they distract themselves with noise, with busyness, with temporary pleasure. They build entire identities around appearing strong, stable, and unaffected. But suffering that is not faced does not disappear. It lives in the body, it lingers in the nervous system, it echoes through the decisions we make and the relationships we enter. It becomes a silent architect of our inner world. The truth is, we fear suffering because we don't understand it. We were never taught how to sit with it. We were taught to conquer it, bury it, avoid it. But what if, instead of running, we turned to face it? What if suffering wasn't the enemy? What if, in the heart of your pain, there is a doorway, a sacred path that leads not to despair, but to liberation? Buddhism does not deny the reality of suffering. In fact, it begins with it. The very first of the Four Noble Truths, which form the foundation of all Buddhist teaching, is the acknowledgement that suffering is an inescapable part of human life, not as a punishment, not as a mistake, but as a profound truth. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, Illness is suffering, death is suffering, losing what we love is suffering, not getting what we want is suffering. Even getting what we want and knowing it won't last brings suffering. This truth is not meant to make us sad, it is meant to wake us up. Because the second noble truth teaches that suffering has a cause. It is not random, it arises from craving, from our deep attachment to things being a certain way. We suffer not just because life changes, but because we want it not to. We want permanence in an impermanent world. We want control in a world that moves according to its own rhythms. We want security in a universe that is constantly shifting. And it is this resistance to what is, this clinging to what was or what might be, that creates suffering. The third noble truth teaches that suffering can end, not by controlling the world, but by releasing the craving, by softening our grip, by letting go. And the fourth noble truth offers the path, the eightfold path, a way of life rooted in right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This path is not a rule book. It is a way of walking through life that transforms suffering into wisdom, confusion into clarity, pain into compassion. So what does it mean to walk through suffering instead of running from it? It means that when pain arises, you sit with it. You breathe with it. You allow it to unfold without trying to suppress it or fix it right away. You don't demand it to leave. You don't judge yourself for feeling it. You open the door and say, I see you. Come in. Tell me what you've come to teach me. This is not a passive surrender. It is an active, courageous choice to be present with what is real, to feel fully without being consumed. Suffering, when met with presence, becomes something different. It becomes a mirror. It shows you your attachments, your fears, your illusions. It reveals the places where you've placed your worth in things that are temporary. It uncovers the false beliefs that have shaped your identity. It invites you to release what no longer serves you, not because you've failed, but because you've outgrown it. Think of the pain you've carried in your life, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the grief, the moments when you felt lost, abandoned, broken. Now ask yourself, what did that pain eventually lead you to see? What part of you awakened because of it? Maybe you learned to set boundaries. Maybe you discovered the strength to walk away. Maybe you stopped pretending and started living with more honesty. Maybe you found compassion for yourself and for others. Maybe you were forced to slow down, to rest, to finally listen to the parts of you that had been ignored for too long. None of this makes the suffering good. Buddhism does not romanticize pain, but it does offer the radical wisdom that suffering, when held with awareness, can become a source of profound growth. The lotus flower grows in the mud, not in clear water. Your clarity, your peace, your depth, they are not born from perfection. They are born from struggle. They are born from the sacred alchemy of staying present with your pain, allowing it to dissolve what is false, and watching what is true rise in its place. To do this, you must stop seeing suffering as failure. You must stop believing that you are wrong for feeling what you feel. You are not broken. You are human. You are a living, breathing being in a body that changes, with a heart that longs, in a world that is impermanent. Of course you will suffer. The question is not, how do I avoid pain, but how do I meet pain with wisdom? How do I walk through the fire and come out more whole, not less? The answer is, one breath at a time. When the pain is too heavy, return to the breath. Let it anchor you. Let it remind you that this moment is all you need to be with. You don't have to fix your entire life right now. You just have to stay with this one breath, and then the next, and then the next. In this way, you build presence, you build inner spaciousness, and within that space, the pain begins to shift. You also begin to realize that suffering connects you to others. The pain you feel is not yours alone. It is part of the collective human experience. Everyone you meet is carrying something. When you sit with your own suffering with compassion, you begin to see others with softer eyes. You no longer rush to judge. You begin to understand. This is how suffering becomes the foundation of compassion, not by crushing you, but by opening you, by breaking your heart open, not into pieces, but into wisdom. And when you look back, you may begin to feel something surprising, not gratitude for the pain itself, but gratitude for the strength you found within it, gratitude for the ways it reshaped you, for the illusions it helped you release, for the tenderness it awakened in you. You become someone who no longer fears pain, not because you enjoy it, but because you know how to walk with it. You know how to sit in the fire without losing yourself. This is true freedom, not a life without suffering, but a life where suffering no longer owns you, no longer defines you, no longer closes your heart. So let this truth live in your bones. You are allowed to suffer, and you are allowed to heal. You are allowed to break down, and you are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to be soft, even when the world expects hardness. You are allowed to feel deeply, to cry, to rest, to begin again. Every time you choose to meet your suffering with presence instead of avoidance, with compassion instead of judgment, with patience instead of panic, you are walking the path of awakening. And one day, in the quiet of your own heart, you will realize suffering was never the enemy. It was the fire that revealed your shape, the teacher that pointed you inward, the storm that washed away what wasn't truly yours. It was the sacred guide that led you home, not to perfection, but to presence. Because in the end, what suffering reveals is that peace was never found in escaping life. It was found in fully living it. The more you let life flow, the less it hurts. There is a deep truth the river has always known, but the mind has long forgotten. It is this: when you stop resisting the current, you begin to float. And when you float, you no longer spend your days fighting the flow of life. You move with it. You begin to understand in your bones that peace does not come from control, and calm does not come from perfection. Peace comes from alignment, from surrender, from trusting that you were never meant to carry the weight of everything, that you were never meant to hold on so tightly to things that are meant to change. In the teachings of the Buddha, the concept of anatta, or non-self, is one of the most challenging and liberating insights. It teaches that the self, as we often understand it, a fixed identity, a rigid ego, a solid sense of me and mine, is an illusion. It does not mean you don't exist. It means the version of you that clings, resists, attaches, and defines itself by what it owns or fears losing. That version is not your truth. That version is the surface. It shifts, it suffers, it breaks, because it tries to hold what cannot be held. Think of how much we cling in one single day. We cling to expectations of how others should treat us. We cling to timelines of when things should happen. We cling to our self-image, to being liked, to being right, to being safe. We cling to people out of fear of being alone. We cling to success out of fear of being forgotten. And then life happens. Someone leaves, a plan collapses, an image cracks, a dream delays, and suddenly we feel betrayed, not by the situation, but by the gap between what we wanted and what is. But what if nothing is wrong? What if life is not attacking you? What if it's simply moving, just as it always does? The seasons do not ask for permission before they change. The waves do not apologize for rising and falling. The leaves do not resist the pull of gravity. Nature flows because it trusts. And so does the soul, until the mind interferes. The more you cling to how life should be, the more pain you create. Because life is not static. It is a river. And rivers do not pause to explain their direction. They turn. They tumble, they carry, they let go. In Buddhist teachings, this is the practice of non-attachment, not detachment, not coldness, not apathy, but a conscious, compassionate loosening of the grip. It means loving without possession, giving without needing something in return, being present without needing permanence. It means waking up each day with open hands and a trusting heart, knowing that everything you experience is passing through you, not defining you. This is not easy, especially when what's flowing away is something you love, a relationship, a version of yourself, a time in your life that felt safe, warm, and clear. The heart wants to hold on. It wants to keep what made it feel whole. But non-attachment does not mean you do not feel. It means you feel everything fully, and then you let it pass. You grieve, but you don't drown. You honor, but you don't imprison. You remember, but you don't resist the present moment in order to live in the past. Letting life flow doesn't mean becoming passive. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you show up with sincerity and openness, and then you allow the outcome to unfold as it must. You act with integrity, but you let go of the result. You plant seeds, but you do not force the blooming. You speak your truth, but you release the need to be understood by everyone. This kind of inner freedom begins to grow when you start noticing how tightly you hold on to everything, every opinion, every desire, every judgment. Begin to ask yourself in moments of tension, what am I clinging to right now? Is it the need to be right, the fear of loss, the belief that I am not safe unless things go a certain way? The more clearly you see your attachments, the more gently you can begin to release them. And when you do, something powerful happens. You begin to feel lighter. You begin to breathe more deeply. You begin to move through life, not like a stone resisting the river, but like a leaf resting on its surface. You begin to realize that much of the pain you thought was caused by life itself was actually caused by your resistance to it. When you stop forcing things, you make space for peace. You begin to witness how life naturally unfolds, messy, beautiful, unpredictable, but always moving. You begin to live from a place of trust, not blind faith, but a deep knowing that everything changes and that you can survive change. You begin to understand that the tighter you hold on, the more it hurts when things shift. But when you soften, when you open, when you let go, you move with the shift instead of against it. Non-attachment also teaches you to let go of the stories you've been telling yourself. Stories of not being enough, of needing to achieve more to be worthy, of needing to be someone you're not in order to be loved. These stories are heavy. They are not your truth. They are products of conditioning, of fear, of a culture that constantly tells you to do more, be more, get more. But the soul does not want more. The soul wants freedom. And freedom comes not from grasping, but from releasing. Releasing comparison. Releasing self-judgment. Releasing the need to be someone else. Releasing the belief that your life must look like anyone else's. When you live in non-attachment, you begin to relate to the world with more compassion and less control. You allow people to be who they are without needing to change them. You allow situations to unfold without trying to manipulate every detail. You accept that sometimes doors close, not because you failed, but because you're being redirected. You begin to live with a soft strength, a strength that comes not from dominating life, but from dancing with it. This is the dance of impermanence, the rhythm of all things rising and falling, appearing and disappearing, breathing in and out. And the more you align with this rhythm, the more gracefully you move. You stop rushing, you stop forcing. You begin to enjoy each moment, not because it will last, but because it is here, and that is enough. In meditation, we practice this constantly. Each breath is an arrival and a departure. Each thought that arises is an opportunity to notice and to let go. You watch it come, you watch it go. Without attachment, without judgment. And in this simple act, you are retraining the mind. You are remembering what the river already knows, that peace is not found in holding on. It is found in letting go. So if you are tired of trying so hard, tired of controlling, tired of being at war with what is, pause. place your hand on your chest. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and whisper to yourself, I am safe to let go. Let go of the expectation, let go of the pressure, let go of the resentment, let go of the fear, let go of what is already gone, let go of what was never yours to keep. Let go of what life is gently asking you to release, and in that letting go, return to the river, return to the present. Return to the wisdom that life flows, not to hurt you, but to free you. Because the more you let life flow, the less it hurts. Not because you become numb, but because you become wise, and that wisdom will carry you further than any plan, any attachment, any illusion of control ever could. Let go, flow, and come home. The more you resist reality, the more you suffer. Peace begins when you stop arguing with what is. At the center of your struggle, beneath all the noise, lies a quiet but painful truth. What hurts you the most is not always the thing that happened. It's the story your mind tells about it. It's the resistance you build around it. It's the invisible inner war you fight every day without realizing you're fighting. You want life to unfold one way, and it goes another. You want people to treat you one way, and they don't. You want your emotions to behave, your past to vanish, your future to obey your plans. But none of it listens, and in that resistance, something begins to tighten in your chest. You become trapped, not by reality itself, but by your refusal to accept it. The Buddha called this mental and emotional tightening dukkha, a word that's often translated as suffering, but is more accurately understood as discontentment, dissatisfaction, friction with life as it is. Dukkha doesn't only mean tragedy, it also means the mild ache of irritation, the restlessness of wanting more, the sadness of realizing things don't stay the same, the quiet exhaustion of always wanting life to be different than it is. This isn't just pain, it's pain layered with resistance. Reality says, this is what's happening, and your mind says, it shouldn't be. And in that moment, suffering begins. This lesson is not about giving up. It's not about becoming passive or indifferent. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about waking up. Waking up from the illusion that you are at war with life and must constantly shape it into what you want. Waking up from the fantasy that if only people behaved better, if only the world was fairer, if only your thoughts would stop, then you could finally be at peace. But peace doesn't work that way. Peace is not a reward for fixing everything. Peace is what arises when you stop needing everything to be fixed. When something happens that you don't want, whether it's a delay, a loss, a confrontation, a disappointment, notice your immediate mental reaction. There is often a voice that says, this isn't fair, this shouldn't have happened, why me? That voice is understandable. It's trying to protect you, but it's also the beginning of resistance. It's the beginning of arguing with what already is. The moment has already unfolded. The reality has already arrived. But the mind is still saying no, and that no is what creates the tension. That no is what builds the wall. That no is what keeps you trapped in emotional pain long after the event is over. Acceptance does not mean you like what happened. It means you acknowledge it fully. You stop pretending. You stop fighting. You say, this is what's here. And from that place, you can respond wisely. You can breathe. You can see clearly. You can take the next step with stability instead of panic. Acceptance is not a closing. It's an opening. It's the space where healing begins. In Buddhist meditation, this is the heart of the practice. To sit with what is. Not to change it. Not to suppress it. But to witness it. The breath may be shallow. The thoughts may be loud. The heart may be aching, but instead of running, you stay, you soften, you notice the resistance. And in that noticing, something begins to shift. Resistance is like a clenched fist. It tightens around life, trying to control it, trying to force it into shape, trying to make the moment different than it is. But that clenching only exhausts you. It builds stress in your body, it creates loops in your mind, and most painfully, it keeps you from the truth. Because reality, no matter how painful, is always more manageable than the stories we wrap around it. You can face loss, you can face sadness, you can even face fear. What you can't face is the spinning mind that says, this shouldn't be happening, again and again without relief. The moment you begin to let go of that inner argument, a doorway opens. Peace doesn't come like a lightning bolt. It comes like a sigh, a slow exhale, a softening, a remembering that you are here and that here is enough. Try this the next time you feel overwhelmed. Sit quietly. Close your eyes. Ask yourself gently, what am I resisting right now? It might be a situation, a memory, an emotion, an uncomfortable truth. Name it, acknowledge it, and then say, I see you, I feel you, I allow you. This is not giving up, it's giving in to reality, to the present, to the only place where transformation can truly begin. You will find that when you stop resisting, the pain loses some of its sharpness. The emotion softens, the body relaxes, the breath deepens, and in that space, wisdom arises. You begin to see clearly, not through the lens of fear or denial, but through the clarity of presence. You begin to understand what action is needed, if any. Sometimes what is needed is change, sometimes it's patience, sometimes it's forgiveness. But that wisdom can only arise when the noise of resistance fades. Buddhist teachings also remind us that so much of our resistance comes from attachment, not just to people or things, but to ideas. We become attached to the idea that life should be fair, that good things should always happen to good people, that if we try hard enough, we'll be protected from pain. But life is not a reward system. Life is movement, change, cause and effect. Everything arises based on conditions and then passes when those conditions change. When you accept this, not intellectually but deeply, you stop taking suffering so personally. You begin to understand that you're not being targeted, you're not being punished. You are simply experiencing life in its raw, ever-changing form. Sometimes it's joyful, sometimes it's painful, but it's never fixed, and that understanding sets you free. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition of a woman named Kisa Gotami. Her baby died suddenly, and she was overcome with grief. She went from house to house carrying the child's body, begging for medicine to bring him back to life. Eventually, she came to the Buddha. He told her that he could help her, but only if she could bring him a mustard seed from a household that had never known loss. She searched every home, but in everyone there was grief. A brother lost, a father buried, a mother mourned. She returned to the Buddha, empty-handed but awakened. Her suffering had not vanished, but the resistance had. She was no longer alone in it. She had seen that pain is universal and that healing begins not with magic, but with truth. This is the power of acceptance. It brings you into alignment with the human experience. It allows you to grieve fully without shame. It allows you to feel anger, sadness, and fear without turning them into lifelong prisons. It allows you to be real, to be here, to be whole. When you stop resisting, you also stop needing life to constantly meet your conditions for peace. You stop saying, I'll be happy when, and instead start asking, how can I find peace here now? That question opens the heart. It reveals that peace is not something you chase. It's something you uncover when you stop fighting what is. The river does not resist the rock. It flows around it. The tree does not resist the wind. It bends with it. The sky does not resist the cloud. It simply holds it until it passes. You too can learn to flow. You can learn to soften. You can learn to meet life as it is, not because it's easy, but because it's real. And realness is the ground of peace. So if you are tired of struggling, of pushing, of arguing with every moment, pause. Let go of the need to win. Let go of the idea that peace only comes after everything is fixed. Let go of the belief that this moment must be different than it is. And in that letting go, you will find what the Buddha found under the Bodhi tree. Not an escape from life, but an embrace of it. Not a denial of pain, but a deep, abiding freedom that says, even here I can be at peace. Even now I can rest. Because the more you resist what is, the more you suffer. But the moment you stop arguing with reality, the moment you say yes to this breath, this feeling, this truth, that is the moment peace begins. Now that you have walked through these lessons, step by step, word by word, breath by breath, you may find that something inside you feels different. Perhaps not louder, not brighter, but quieter, like a soft river beneath the surface of your being has begun to flow again. Not because all your pain has vanished, not because all your questions have been answered, but because perhaps for the first time in a long while, you allowed yourself to stop running from what's here. That, in itself, is awakening. You have not been given instructions. You have not been told what to believe. You have simply been invited to see more clearly, to feel more gently, to sit more honestly with yourself and your life. And maybe, somewhere along the way, you remembered something ancient, something true, something the world tried to make you forget, that peace is not something you find out there. It is something you return to in here. Each teaching, each breath of this journey has been a doorway, not a command, but a key. A quiet offering to help you remember that your life, just as it is sacred. That your emotions, no matter how messy, are part of your path. That your softness is not a flaw. That your suffering does not make you broken. That your stillness is a kind of power the world cannot take from you. You have learned that the storm outside cannot touch the sky within. You have seen that clinging to control does not bring peace. It only tightens the chains around your heart. You have felt the gentle truth that letting go is not loss, it is freedom. You have remembered that silence is not emptiness, it is the space where life begins to speak. You have sat beside your pain without flinching. You have held your own heart with kindness, even when the world was unkind. You have become the witness, the mountain, the river, the breath, the monk who lives within you. And yet this is not the end. This is the beginning. The world will not stop moving. There will be more storms, more changes, more moments where the mind panics, the heart aches, and the path disappears beneath your feet. But you now walk with a different awareness, a different presence, a different trust. Because now, when life becomes too loud, you will remember to become still. When fear rises, you will remember to breathe. When sadness visits, you will offer it a seat at your table. When resistance returns, you will gently ask it what it's protecting. And when you forget all of this, because forgetting is human, you will remember again, and again, and again. This is the real path, not one of constant bliss, but of constant return. To the breath, to the body, to the moment, to the truth, to yourself. So as you go forward, carry these teachings, not in your mind, but in your heart. Let them guide you, not like rules, but like a gentle light in your chest that flickers when you're present and dims when you resist. Let your life become your meditation. Let your relationships become your practice. Let your healing become your temple. And above all, let your presence become your gift. Because the world doesn't need more people trying to be perfect. It needs people who are real, awake, kind, quietly strong. It needs you just as you are. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too much or too late. You are simply on the path. And the path is within you. Always. Walk gently now. And remember, every breath is home.